Might as well get it started. I usually like to start right around this time, so let's get right in and jump on, and we'll keep hitting up the chats and making sure everybody that needs to be here is here. If you know someone that's not here that needs to be here, let them know. Welcome to Gap Mastermind, where every Monday we bring you mastermind topics for us to continue to grow and take action and level up our production. Yeah, I just spelled up gap, didn't I? So excited to be here with you guys. How's everybody doing? Let's lead up this chat. I'll tell you, our guest for today is a very high energy guest. So we gotta make sure we bring on the fire from the beginning. All right, we gotta show this guy some massive love. So put a 1 in the chat if you're ready for some fire, some tactics, some strategies to make sure that we crushed this shift with the NAR lawsuit and all of that we need to adjust. Not as scary as it seems, but we do need to adjust and do a few little things to make sure we continue to grow our business. So I see a lot of ones. Yeah, I'm telling you, Joe has more ones than anybody. So that's what it's all about. So with that, I know this is going to be a very, very enlightening session for all of you guys, and I want to get right to it. So I'm going to introduce our guest for today. And, I don't need to read a bio for this guy, but I want to make sure I don't miss any of the magic because, he's a dear friend. He's a person I admire. He's a massive hustler. 11 years in the business. He runs the Joe Rosen team out of the Port St. Lucie area. He's an Icon Award recipient from EXP and national speaker. He also does coaching every day at 7-Eleven in the morning. He's in Facebook dropping fire every single day for 4 or 5 years that I've seen him. Doesn't miss a day. He has a military background and served. So thank you so much for your service. And, that discipline, that relentlessness, that world-class mindset, that nurturing from the armed forces shows up every day in the value he brings through, the different venues that he offers, coaching, training, like YouTube, Facebook, to his clients, his team, his organization, and all of us here today. He's a Bronze Star recipient, and he is somebody that is being a voice when it comes to what is just happening with the NAR changes and the things that we need to comply with. So without further ado, let's open up the floor and give up a big, big warm welcome to our friend and speaker for today, Joe Rosen. What's up, buddy?
How you doing, brother?
Great, man. Great. Always great to be hanging out with you, and excited to hear your message and what you have to offer. Obviously, being one of our top partners here in the Global Alliance, it's great to be spending some time with you.
Yeah, and right back at you, man. You have been such a just huge value add to me and my business. It's, I always say I like EXP. I love the people, man. The people are what make it what it is. And I've been blessed enough to be with some of the greatest people in real estate. So I really appreciate you, my man. First of all, just so everybody knows, Carlos said, I am high energy. I am high energy. And I'll tell you, when it comes to high energy, I think it's really important to be high energy and not just loud and crazy like I know I am, but to have positivity about everything that's going on in your life. And, I don't want to get too deep on this because this isn't the topic, but I do want to align your mind where I think it should be really for any training, but for my training today. And that's just, being appreciative of what we've got and taking advantage of anything that you've got as an opportunity in front of you. I was in Afghanistan and I saw the worst of the worst. I saw some of the craziest way to treat people. I saw some of the lowest living standards. And I'll tell you, a lot of those people were happy. And then I came back here to America and I see people with iPhones, $50,000 a year jobs, $25,000 cars, food everywhere, clean water everywhere. The most opportunity you'll ever see, and you have ever seen in the history of mankind, and we're depressed. So I don't think it's that we don't have everything we need. We've got more than we need, I think it's a mindset issue, right? And we've got that, I don't want to say issue, but that opportunity to align our minds every single day in our business. So you've got your family and you've got your health and you get your finances, but talking about business, when it's Monday, man, how many people say, I got a case of the Mondays, or oh, it's Monday, or oh, it's hard to get out of bed today? I'm the opposite. When that alarm clock goes off, I am fired up to get out of bed. And it's not because I'm magical or I was born with some brain gene that gets me positive. It's because I have worked for years to read the right books, to surround myself with the right people, to go to the right events, to listen to the right videos, to get my positivity where I want it, where I choose for it to be, by educating myself and forcing myself into that mindset. And I'll tell you, it was very much so, fake it till you make it up front. But very quickly, I started to feel all the benefits, all the value of being positive all the time. And it just helped me out so much. When I lose a deal, I don't get bummed at all. I say, awesome. I just gained hours of time that I can go out, build more relationships, prospect, and go to more appointments. This is great. Thank you so much, man. I'm blessed. That's the mindset I have. And when people see that mindset, they want to work with you. When they see that negativity, or, this happened to me, or, I got a case of the Mondays, nobody wants to work with that. So change your attitude, and it's crazy what you can get out of life because of that, right? It's the greediest thing you can do. Just be positive, and you'll get so much out of it. So why do I go 2-3 minutes into positivity when we're talking about the NAR settlement? This is why. If you are in any groups, and I'm not advising this, trust me, but if you're in any Facebook groups online, you have heard, and probably locally, forget the Facebook groups, you've heard two different stories of the NAR settlement. And I would say 70, 80% of the stories I've heard are, woe is me. Oh, this is tough. This is going to suck. This is horrible. We're all doomed. It's just horrendous what's happening. And the other 20, 30% is either business as usual, no big deal, or this is phenomenal. Man, I'm excited for these opportunities. This is going to be so great. And I'll tell you, if you look at the two different groups of people, right? Let's just say it's 80-20. The 80% who's very negative about it, they tend to be negative about a lot of things, and they tend to be the bottom 80% of agents. I know the agents in my market who sell 20, 30, 40 homes a year or more, and that is not what I'm hearing from those guys. Those guys are in the 20% saying business as usual, or yeah, I'm excited. This is a great opportunity. So ask yourself which one of those two groups you want to be in. Which group of people do you want to be surrounded by? Have you ever heard the statement, you are the 5 people that you hang around with, right? If you want to be around those people, go hang around those people. And I promise you, those people are going to tell you that this is a phenomenal opportunity and it's not as scary as it seems. So, first of all, I want to give an overview of what we're talking about today. Today, I'm not going to get so much into legalities and the paperwork and everything else, everything like that. I hope you've taken some training. I hope you've reached out to your broker, your team leader, whoever, to get yourself as educated as possible. I've poured hours into this to make sure that me and my team are ready. And I hope you do the same. I hope you've got all the verbiage figured out. You've combed through those agreements. You've taken notes so you know exactly what you want to do, when you want to do it, when a client needs you to do it. So you're not reaching out to that broker in an emergency last-minute phone call, right? You want to make that call right now so there is no emergency. So we're going to talk more about the mindset. We're going to do a little bit of role play, and I'm going to give you my personal perceptions on what this means, right? Carlos makes a great point. He says it's different for each state, so do your homework. Absolutely. I am 93.6% sure everything I say today will work for everybody, but I'm not 100% sure. So absolutely check with your brokers if anything is different. Now, the first thing I want to get into, I have made this comment, I don't know how many times, and I guarantee you've seen somebody else make this comment, and you've either said, yes, or you've said, no, that's crazy, right? And this is the comment. Realtors are as important to people, or at least they can be in the right situations, as an attorney or a doctor. And ask yourself, do you truly believe that? Because if you roll your eyes at that, that is a statement to yourself about the value you feel that you deliver to buyers and sellers, right? That's a self-made statement, probably internally, but a self-made statement about the value you feel that you deliver to your clients. Now, if you feel like, yeah, of course I'm worth it, I would say you're absolutely right. I'll tell you, man, at some point, I'm going to have a stroke or a heart attack or cancer or who knows what I'm going to have. We're all going to die of something. And I promise you on that day, when I've got an amazing doctor sitting right next to my bed, man, that guy's going to be the most valuable guy in the world. He's going to be more valuable than my kids, than my wife, than my friends, than my everybody. That doctor is a number one. I need you more than anything. My guy, right? Now, if I got to go to court for something, maybe I'm being sued or I don't know. That's probably about it. I ain't getting divorced, so I don't know what else it would be. Maybe I'm getting sued. Maybe I'm suing somebody else, right? They took advantage of me. I don't know diddly squat about Florida law other than real estate. And I'm going to have a real tough time winning that court case. Is it worth it for me to spend $5, $10, $15,000 on somebody to maybe get my money back and more, but absolutely represent my best interests and position me so that I can succeed with whatever the case is about? Of course it is. And at that point, that attorney's number one in my life. He's the most important, the most valuable, and I'm so appreciative to have him. Guys, we're not selling Hot Wheels here, right? This isn't a candy store where we're selling $1.50 suckers. We're selling at a minimum $200,000-$300,000 properties, and at a maximum 7, 8, 9-figure properties. We're selling some real deals here. These are big, big, big situations. And I promise you, if you talk to somebody about what they've experienced in life and what the top 5, 10 things in life are that have happened to them. Yeah, you're going to have marriage and having kids. That's going to be towards the top, maybe graduating college, something like that. But somewhere along the line is going to be buying our home. It's a big, big, big deal. And because it's a big deal and they don't know what to do, it's certainly not as well as you do, and they can't position themselves as well, and they can't negotiate as well as you, and they don't know the numbers as well and the process as well, and who is title and who's the appraiser and what's a survey and all those different things, you are incredibly valuable. If you've ever been involved with a transaction where the seller or buyer is representing themselves, you know it is a train wreck. That doesn't mean you can't get lucky and buy or sell a property and everything goes right. It can happen. But holy smokes, can you position yourself poorly? And that's where we come into play. Why do I say all that? Because we have to buy into our value. If we don't buy into our value, I promise the person across the table is not going to buy into your value. If you're not getting buyers to sign buyer reps with you, if you're not getting sellers to sign listing agreements with you, it's because they do not see enough value out of you to justify the fee that you're about to charge. Or maybe they do, but somebody else has more value. You've got to be the most valuable person. That's your job. You have to be. That's this whole business, right? Because we're 100% commission. You're either the most valuable person in that person's eyes and they hire you, or you're not and they don't. So part of that is the mentality that you need to be successful, especially after this NAR settlement. So we got 2 main changes that have come out of this settlement, right? And people talk about it like we're doing heart surgery here. It's not that crazy. It's 2 simple things. Number 1, you can't advertise commission in any way. I saw somebody the other day who wanted to mow their lawn with 3% outlined, right? They didn't mow that part. Another person had painted a dining room wall and it was pink, but then it said 3% in like a darker shade of red. You can't get away with that, guys. If you do that, now a seller can certainly mow their lawn or paint their wall. They can do whatever they want, but you cannot allow that into the MLS. And that's it. That's it. You can put it virtually anywhere else. You can put it on Facebook. You can put it on your listing sign. You can go mow it into your lawn. You just can't take a photo of it and put it out in the MLS. You can tattoo it on your forehead. You can put it in an email, text it. It does not matter. You just can't put it on the MLS. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. And we're going to talk about why here in a little bit, right? The second main change is you can't show a home without a representation agreement. And I'll tell you, again, let's go back to that 80-20 group, right? The 80 who maybe is a little bit more negative, maybe doesn't have quite the work ethic, and maybe they're not selling as many homes, versus the 20 who are the studs, and they're the studs at every single thing. They're selling the homes, they're positive, they're ready to go. They wake up early, they get their workout in, they're drinking all their water, they're going to bed at the same time, and they got their whole day time blocked. Look at those two different groups. The group with the 20% who's selling homes, if you polled them, I'd be willing to bet that the overwhelming majority have always gotten their buyers into buyer agreements on day one. This isn't a change for them. And for the 80%, sure, it's scary. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. But just realize this is not new for a lot of agents who've been doing this for a long time. And if it's not new for them, even if we're newer or we're less confident or we don't sell as much, all we got to do is tweak this little head up here, and we can get our brains where it needs to be so that we can also believe and do what the winners up here are believing in doing. And that's where I want to get you guys today. So let's talk about that first one. No commissions advertised on the MLS. I think the major fear among buyers agents is that the buy side commissions are going to go away. And the large amount of buyers that will be unable to pay the buy side commission, which is true, a lot of them can't pay it, are going to result in a significant decrease in agent income, especially if you're a buyer's agent. All of that is understandable. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but it's all understandable. I would say this: you've always been able to put a listing on the market as a listing agent and offer $1. The MLS didn't tell you how much you had to offer. They just said you had to offer something to be on the MLS. Now, I'll tell you, if you go back a month ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, and you start scrolling through all the listings in your area, I'll tell you this: I've shown a ton of homes. I've never seen one that paid out $1. Why is that? I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is because that sucker ain't going to sell. That's going to be a tough old sell. And you're saving what, 2.5%, 3% on average to lose maybe 5%, 10% because your buyer pool just went down to zero? That's going to be a tough sell. So if you think it's going to drastically change, I would say, why hasn't it already? They could already offer you $1, and they didn't. They chose to offer you 2.5%, 3%, 3.5%, whatever it was. And it's always been that way. Now, sure, you got your scragglers that are paying out 4 or 5%. Thank you, baby Jesus. And you've also got the other guys who are paying out 2%, or, some of those other brokerages where they do like 1.5 minus a 495 admin fee or some goofy thing like that. You're always going to have that. And that's always going to be maybe 5, 10% of the people that you're working with. That's probably not going to change. But what's also not going to change is the fact that the overwhelming majority are going to pay out a strong commission, especially if you know how to ask for it, right? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. I don't know if I'm supposed to be paying attention to the chat here, but I'm just going to look at this. Okay, we're good. So let's go to the other one. No showings without an agreement, right? So what's the fear? The fear is among buyers agents that buyers are not going to work with me if I don't have, or if I'm requiring a buyer agreement. And that's an understandable fear. I get that. I've had people say to me before, not going to sign it because I always required it on day one. Not going to sign it. Okay, I get that. But I would say this: you're in a great position now because legally every agent has to get them into a buyer representation agreement. And if they don't, they're risking their license. I ain't risking my license. I'm betting you're not going to risk your license. I'm getting that sucker in a buyer representation agreement. So you're at no disadvantage compared to everybody else. Now, that buyer is maybe in a tough spot because you're going to tell them no. They're going to call someone else. That other person's going to tell them no. They're going to call someone else. That other person's going to tell them no. And when they get sick of calling people because they all tell them no, they're going to think back to those 2, 3 agents they just called, and they're going to pick the one who treated them the best and the one who followed up. So A, treat them good, and B, follow up. Piece of cake, right? So you're on a level playing field. That's the first thing you've got to remember. Now, I would say remember these two things also. Buyers are going to work with two different, let me reword that. Buyers are going to work with people based on two different things. Number one, who gets in front of them first, right? I forget what the stat is, but it's like 70, 80, 90%. I don't know. It's a big number. Work with the first agent that they encounter. That's probably not going to change. right? If you get in front of them first, you're not going to win it every time, but you're going to have great odds of getting to work with that buyer, which is awesome. That's what we want. So how do you push yourself in front of this buyer consistently as a system, right? I love that. Who is it? The guy who wrote Atomic Habits. James Cleary, I think. I can't remember what his name is. Yeah, okay. Carlos, give me the head nod. And the quote, I'm going to mess this up, but you'll get the point. We don't rise to our goals, we fall to our systems. And I completely agree with that, right? So what systems are we putting in place? So number one, I would say prospect. And if you've ever had a coach, a team leader, a broker, a mentor, anybody like that, I guarantee one of the first things out of their mouths when you've asked them, what do I need to do to be successful, has been that one beautiful word, prospect. You just got to prospect, baby. And what is prospecting? It's literally having conversations with people. That's it. That's what prospecting is. It's not scary. It can be cold calling, and some of you are scared of that. That's understandable. It can be open houses. It can be walking down the doggone street and just saying hi to people and striking up conversations. It can be at your local Zumba group. Do they even do Zumba anymore? I don't know. It can be at the grocery store. It can be a networking group. It can be calling expireds, calling FISBOs. It can be a bazillion different things, but what it boils down to is you have to have massive amounts of conversations with people. If you do, you're going to win. And if you don't, you're not. I'll tell you, I've got an amazing agent on my team, and she's only been in the industry for 1 year. And I showed her this morning in my sales meeting. I said, Amy, look at this. I'm the top agent on the team. Top in sales, been here the longest, most expertise, knowledge, all that great stuff, right? But you out-conversationed me last week, right? I had 60 conversations. She had 86. I had one buyer appointment. She had 3. Isn't that amazing? And then I looked over the year, and I don't remember what the numbers were, but she had more conversations than me throughout the year. And she was so close, had as many listing appointments as I did this year. And I said, Amy, look, you've about, and I'm probably underselling her here, you've about doubled my conversations. And because of my skills, I'm set. Like I'm able to convert those into appointments, but you're right behind me. Meaning if you outwork the top agents in your market in prospecting every single day, you can be the number 1 agent in your market every single day. And if you do that over time, you'll be the number 1 agent in your market, period. Just outwork the guy. That's all you got to do. And I'm excited for her to be the number 1 agent. She will be if she keeps working the way she is, but you've got to prospect. The second thing you've got to do to get a buyer to want to work with you is you've got to show value. And you can't just show value. You have to show unique value. Now, if you guys know Carlos, man, he's a pretty fancy guy. He's got a Tesla. You still got the Tesla, Carlos?
Not anymore. No, those were the midlife crisis days back in 2015.
All right. Well, when he did, I promise you, if he had gone to this Tesla store and they said, hey, it's got all these cool things and blah, 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 blah. And he's looking at those like, that's really valuable. That's really valuable. But then he goes down here to this store and they have the same list of valuable things, which they're also valuable. But because the value isn't different, it's the same doggone car, Carlos is probably going to pick the car that's the cheapest. He's going to go with price, probably. However, if he goes to this...
There's a funny story around that. I went to buy a bottom of the line, the cheapest Tesla, and the guy ended up selling me the most expensive, top of the line Tesla there was. And I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy that's gonna go and splurge and buy, but it was just the experience that I felt I was going to have with that car, and I did for 8 years. I owned it. So
okay, so it was the perceived experience that salesman sold you that got you upsold, correct? Beautiful.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Perfect to my point. So my point is, if you can make that buyer feel like the experience is going to be better with you, it's going to be different with you than whoever else you're competing with, you're going to win. Prospect, show your unique value. Unique is important here. Because when I ask a lot of agents, what is your unique value proposition? They have value and they share it with me, but it's not unique. It's a lot of things that virtually every other agent's going to say that they do. You've got to show unique. Now, if you don't know what your unique value proposition is, it's not a big deal. That's just your homework assignment. So after this appointment, you should be writing this down right now. You want to lock yourself in a room or go to Starbucks or whatever you got to do. It doesn't matter. But get by yourself and think, what do I do? Would I hire me? Knowing what all the agents offer, would I hire me as a buyer's agent? Would I hire me as a listing agent? If you would, why? And then list out those things and try to make them as objective as possible, measurable, so that that buyer or seller can see the difference. If you wouldn't, well, that's okay too. You're being honest with yourself. And I would not always hire myself, but I asked myself, what would I need to do? Who would I need to be? What systems would I need to have in place to where if I knew that as a buyer or seller, I'd say, absolutely, I'm picking Joe every single time. And then I just started humming away, man. Just started building it. I said, okay, this is the list of 32 things we got to do. Let's get to work, baby. And I started creating those 32 things. I'm still creating it, man. We're like on number 26. I still got some more to do. But if you do that, you now are not only incredibly valuable, but you've got the confidence because you perceive that you're valuable. And that's where I think a lot of people are failing right now. A lot of agents are failing. Is they look at this as a scary thing, but if you were really to get into a psychiatric, what the heck is it? With a psychologist, you're in an appointment with a psychologist. I think it would boil down to the fact that a lot of agents don't perceive themselves as uniquely valuable compared to other agents. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. I was a new agent at one point. Guess what? I sucked. I sucked. At the end of year one, I sucked. I wouldn't have bought me then either. It probably wasn't until about year 3 or 4 where I had the confidence, not because it's magical, but because I put in the work and I built the confidence through doing things and creating systems where I said, yes, I would absolutely hire me all day long because I know what I give people on average, and it is way better than other agents. And if you don't have that, it's great. Just go build it, right? All right, let's move on. Let's skip that for later. Let's do a little bit of role play. I might pick on some of you guys. This is where you're going to start shutting off your screens. Don't shut off your screens now. Let's build some confidence. And it's okay to mess up. In fact, I'll be whichever the rougher position is every single time if you'd like. But a listing agent to a seller. Let's talk about these 3 different discussions, right? You've got a listing agent talking to their seller. You've got a listing agent talking to a buyer's agent. There's 4 conversation. You got a buyer's agent talking to a listing agent. And then you've got a buyer's agent talking to a buyer. Those are 4 different conversations that we're going to have to start getting really good at around this NAR settlement. So let's start with the first one, which is listing agent to a seller. Now I'm going to give you what I am planning to do. And a lot of this hasn't changed. It's the same doggone thing. It's just a few different words. And then we can maybe role play it here. So number 1, I tell my sellers, be prepared to pay for that buyer's agent. That's it. And I'm not asking them. I'm not having a conversation. I'm telling them, dude, if you want to win, this is the way to win. We're going to pay it. And I explain why, right? I explain that the buyer pool is this big. If you've got a 20-year-old roof in Florida, I'm assuming we got a lot of Florida agents in here. Your buyer pool just went, and it's that big. What do you think that does to your showings and your offers and your price, right? And now you don't want to stage, and now you want to overprice by 20 grand. That buyer pool keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So if we're also not offering compensation to a buyer's agent, every buyer who either just doesn't want to pay it or who doesn't have the cash to pay it, which is a lot of buyers, especially in that 500 and under category, your buyer pool just went down to smack dab zero almost. And the people who can pay it, who are finally remaining in that small pool, if you've ever had a cash buyer, you know this is true. They think they're so doggone special that they can come in 20, 30, 40 grand low. So now all your offers are likely going to be very low because they think they're special. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. And so you're going to save $15,000 to lose 20 or 30. That doesn't really make sense, right? So you've got to educate them. So that's the first thing. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have them sign and if you guys haven't familiarized yourselves with the documents yet, get familiarized. Now, this is a Florida thing. I don't know if this is everywhere. I assume it is some sort of something like this. But EXP is saying, and let's take a timeout. I want to talk about this for a second too. EXP has come out and said, we're not going to allow EXP as a list side broker to pay whoever, Remax, Coldwell Banker, it doesn't matter, on the buy side as a broker. We're not going to do broker to broker compensation. We're just not going to do that. And their belief is that that is the view of the Department of Justice. They don't want to see it. So we're being proactive. Every professional video I've seen has said, that makes sense. But there is a fear out there amongst people that EXP doesn't like buyer's agents and they're not going to pay us anymore. I've probably had half a dozen people reach out to me in the last 2 weeks, ask me that question. I had someone in Minnesota reach out and ask me that question. And I said, the math is exactly the same. It's just your settlement statement's going to look a little bit different. Instead of the seller paying EXP and EXP paying you, it's going to be the seller paying you. But the numbers are still the same. You're going to get the same check. I'm going to get the same check. Seller's going to have the same number at the very bottom of their statement. It's just we got to move around where it's at on a settlement statement to make the Department of Justice happy. It's no big deal. You guys should be confident in saying that to people. You should practice that. Because if you get asked that question, you can't confidently say that, you could lose a showing. That's a big deal, right? So I'm going to have that seller sign that direct compensation to buyer's broker agreement on day one. It's going to be a part of my listing paperwork. When I send them the listing agreement and the ABA disclosure and the wire fraud disclosure and the seller's disclosures and maybe an HOA addendum or whatever the heck they need to sign, I'm just going to slip that direct compensation to buyer's agent right in there. We're going to get it signed on day one. Now, maybe we get an agent who comes in and they write up an offer and it's got a much lower commission. Okay, well, I can't put that agreement on the MLS anyway because it talks about commission. They don't need to know it, so I'll hide it. I'll say, you want 2%? You got it. Where do I sign? But if they're asking for a commission, I've already got the sellers mentally to buy into it. I'll share another little trick that I've used that has gotten rid of loads of objections, and it saved my butt a couple times. Whenever I'm doing paperwork, it's all in a video. All my paperwork is in a video. So when I'm doing listing paperwork with you, or when I'm filling out all of the offer paperwork for you as a buyer, I go home, I screen share, and I walk through the whole thing after I've completed it all. And I say, all right, George and Brenda, I appreciate you putting this offer together with me. I just want to go through, well, let's do a listing side. I appreciate you listing your home with me. I'm excited to get it on next Tuesday. We got the photographer coming out, blah, 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 blah. Now I want to go through this paperwork so you fully understand exactly what you're agreeing to. If you guys have any questions, let me know. And then I just start going through it line by line. And to get through all the listing paperwork, it's usually about an 8-10 minute video. It's not very long at all. And then I send it to them and it's fully branded. I've got a beautiful The Rosen Group thumbnail on that YouTube video. It's unlisted, so nobody can see it. I can see how many views I get. I can see how long it was watched. I can get all the metrics to see what they actually did. And I'll tell you, my objections went from, well, I'll say this. I probably get one objection for every 10 I used to get when I did it in person. So I do the whole listing presentation in person, but when it comes to the paperwork, I say, great, I'm going to head home right now. I'm going to get this all done, and you'll have it in about 2-3 hours along with a video that explains anything. If you have any questions, let me know. My objections go down to 0. It also has saved my butt. And I'll tell you, the biggest one is the brokerage fee. But I've had people also, trying to think of what else. Oh, personal property, right? I always say at the top of the listing agreement, hey, I've listed all the personal property out that you and I have talked about. If any of this is incorrect, please let me know before we put this on the MLS. Otherwise, this is what we're offering to people. And it'll say garage in the fridge, for example. And then we'll get to closing. And the offer also has garage on the fridge. And I also told them in that video, and we'll get to closing. And at the final walkthrough, the garage isn't in the fridge. And I'll say, guys, I told you twice, it's in 2 different videos. It's on the offer. Come on now. If you just have it on the offer, they're going to say, well, Joe, I'll sign anything. You're my agent. I trust you. But if you can get it in a video, man, it makes you look powerful, because now they're not going to blame you. Even if you're right, and even if they get that fridge put back in, if you don't have the video to show them that twice you told them that, they might have a little resentment, and now the referrals go down the tube. Now the repeat business goes down the tube. So that video has helped me immensely. So we're going to talk about the fact that they got to pay. We're going to get that direct compensation signed. And if they don't want to pay compensation, we do a lot of role play within our organization. If they don't want to pay it, what a lot of agents will immediately do is they'll get defensive and they'll start pitching why you should want to pay a compensation. I would say that might not be the best route. I think the best route is to show a little bit of empathy and curiosity, right? And you've got to be genuine and kind when you do this. But what I would always say, if they said, yeah, I'm not paying, I'd say, interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And that's it. Interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And they're excited to tell you. Trust me. It's not going to be tough to get it out of them. And most of them are going to say, I read all about the NAR settlement. I know everything that's going on. I don't have to pay it. I'm not paying it. Now you can say, and again, show them empathy. Don't get right into the pitch. Say, that makes complete sense. I can completely understand that. Would it be okay if I showed you my perspective? And if you buy into it, great. And if you don't, I support you. Let's not pay a commission. And they're always going to say, sure. Now, it might be a different version of sure. It might be, well, you can tell me anything you want, but I ain't changing my mind. And that's okay. So then I'm going to share with them, okay, I appreciate that. And then I'm going to get into educating them. And I'm going to talk about that buyer pool dwindling down. And I'm going to talk about a lot of buyers don't have the cash. They're going to be in an agreement for 3%. You're paying out zero. You got a $400,000 home here. That's $12,000. It's not even a negotiation. They're gone. And now the people you do have left who are strong and have cash, they know it. And they know you don't have a lot of buyers because you're not offering that. And now they're going to take advantage of you on price a lot of times. Are you okay with that? Or would you like to offer that carrot that can get us all the people we truly want, which are the people represented by buyer's agents? And I talk about wolves and sheep a lot too, right? The majority of buyers, 95% of buyers, are just normal, like, hey, we're moving our family. We've got, either a marriage or a divorce, or the kids left, or we're having a kid, or we hit the lottery, or a new job, or whatever it is, right? And they say, okay, we need a new house. That's 95% of buyers. And those buyers are typically working with agents. They want convenience. They want to know they're taken care of. They got to hit a certain timeline. It's those other 5% who don't want to work with buyer's agents, who have cash. Those are the wolves. And the wolves are coming out for a deal. So if you think that by getting rid of the 95% who have buyer's agents to attract the 5% is a good thing, I want you to know, Mr. Seller, those are the wolves. And they're out to take advantage of you on price. Are you okay with that? And I'll tell you, 8, 9 times out of 10, when you explain that, they're going to say, okay, I get it. So what are you suggesting? And then go into what you suggest and say it confidently and be prepared. Don't make it up on the spot. Have already thought through this whole conversation and be prepared with what your comeback's going to be. Not because you want to be manipulative or a snake oil salesman or anything like that, but because you and I are friends, or maybe I'm your dad or your brother or whoever, and you ask me for advice on literally anything, and we got a great relationship. If I give immediate, confident, crisp advice to you versus if I go, look at my body language there too, right? This versus, And I sit there and think, and I think, well, you could do this and that might work for you. It might not work though. You could do that, but if that didn't work, then you kind of be in a bind. We could do this too. Now, you love and trust me. We're friends, we're brothers, we're, maybe I'm your dad. I don't know. Some of you guys, maybe I'm your son. But the two different pitches make you feel very differently about the confidence you have in the opinion I'm giving you. With that first opinion, you're saying, yeah, that sounds good. You made it sound good. It made me feel good. Let's do it. With the second one, it's like, you don't sound overly confident, which makes me not overly confident. So practice it. A lot of this stuff just comes down to practicing. How many of you guys are going to role play? How many of you guys have role played these 4 different conversations? Have you role played it once or have you role played it 100 times? It's 2 very different skill sets, 1 time versus 100 times. I love when I got windshield time and I'm headed to a listing appointment, I go through that listing agent to seller conversation. When I'm headed to showings, I go through the buyer's agent to buyer conversation over and over and over. I've been doing this 11 years. I've sold hundreds of homes. Every single time I go through that. Right? If you do that, I promise you're going to have a great time with this. So let's go listing agent to buyer's agent. What am I saying as a listing agent when that buyer's agent reaches out and says, hey, Joe, you paying me commission? What I'm going to say, I know a lot of people want to say, yeah, I'm paying out 3%. Woo, let's go. And you can. I feel like you might have given up some money because I know there's a lot of agents out there who will do it for 2 and 2.5%. So why give up that money if we don't have to? I'll tell you though, I am educating my sellers to pay out 2.5 to 3%. But what I'm going to say is the sellers and I have discussed compensation to the buyer's agent. Feel free to write it into your offer. That's it. And I wrote right here in my notes to share with you guys. I will be doing massive copy and paste with this. I'm just going to have that text saved. And when anybody texts me and asks me, because agents aren't calling you, when they text me and ask me, Joe, are you working with buyer's agents? You hand out compensation? I'm going to say literally that. The sellers and I have discussed compensation to the buyer's agent. Feel free to write it into your offer. That's it. That's it. And then they can rate them whatever they want. Maybe they got their buyer at 2, 2.5, and I'm paying out 3. Okay, well, if you write 2 into the offer, I just save my seller 1%. But I also said we discussed it, write it in. So I'm not going to lose any showings or buyers. And if they push me a little bit further and say, well, yeah, but what did you discuss with your seller? I'm just going to play dumb and I'm going to say, oh, I really didn't get to the details. I just explained how real estate's always worked, how it's likely going to work now, and the fact that if they don't want to lose all the buyer's agents, they're going to have to pay something out to attract them. So we didn't really get into numbers, but feel free to write in whatever you've got in your buyer rep there. You're going to get some 2s and 2.5s, and you're going to save your sellers some money. Now, this is my favorite one. What's the discussion going to sound like? Joe, the buyer's agent, calling the listing agent. It's going to sound like this. There is no discussion. There is no call. There is no text because I don't care what you're offering me. I got my buyer and a buyer rep at 3%. I'm writing 3% into the offer. And I've already educated my buyer on the fact that we're doing it. I already got them to buy into it in our buyer consultation. And they've already got a signed buyer rep with me. Well, now because it's legally a requirement. So why do I need to text them? I don't care if your seller's offering to pay 0 or 2 or 2.5. This guy right here, this guy gets 3. That's what he gets. Now, if you're offering $500,000 to sell your home and you've discussed, I better make this simple math for me, paying out 2.5%. And I come in and I don't ask you what you're paying out. And I come in and I just write 3% of the offer. That 0.5% is $2,500. I'll tell you, I've sold a lot of homes in that $500,000 range. I've never seen one fall apart over $2,500. I've never seen one fall apart over $5,000. That sucker ain't falling apart. I've also seen all kinds of buyers and sellers saying, I ain't going to budge on price. Don't even bring me an offer if it's $1 less. I ain't budging. We've all heard that, right? You've heard that. I've heard that. Or you've heard buyers, I ain't going any higher. Don't even let them counter. I ain't doing it. But then what happens when you get the counter? They say, fine, I'll sign it. Right? People say things all the time. They do different things. So just put the 3% in if you're worth it. If you've got your buyer rep at 3. And if they don't like it, they'll tell you in a counter. But I don't even know why we're having that conversation. I think number one, it's a waste of time. Number two, I think it's bad mentality. I honestly think if you have the mentality that I'm going to call the listing agent and ask them what they're giving me, I'm going to reword it. This is how I would word it. I'm going to call the listing agent and ask them what table scraps are going to be left over for me, the meek, weak little buyer's agent. And I'm going to be so thankful that they paid me. I'm here to kick ass, guys. I'm a pit bull. I'm here to work it for my buyer. And I'm worth 3. My buyer believes I'm worth 3. It's in writing. We're going after 3. Now, of course, if you come back and say, we're only going to pay 2.5, I'm going to have the conversation of, hey, we could increase the price by $2,500. That would net the seller exactly the same amount. What are the odds it falls apart on an appraisal? And maybe that's part of your negotiation. Maybe you say, I tell you what, let's raise it to 5,025 and pay me 3. And if it appraises short, I will cover the first $2,500 with my commission because I'm very confident this home will appraise. And I almost said 9 times out of 10, but 49 out of 50 times it's going to appraise. And 1 time out of 50, I'm going to lose $2,500. Big deal. So really, I think it's the wrong mentality to get into of what does someone else think I'm worth and what are they willing to pay me? I don't give a damn what you think I'm worth. I'm sure the seller doesn't think I'm worth a lot. They haven't heard my buyer consultation. They don't know what I do for a transaction. They don't know my statistics. Of course, they don't think I'm worth 3%. I completely get that. That's not offensive. But my buyer does, and he's written into the offer. So if you want to do the offer, you got to sign it. So guys, don't let fear pull you down that rabbit hole of texting and calling listing agents to ask what they're willing to give you. Who cares what they're willing to give you? And like I said, a lot of them, if you call them, are going to tell you they're giving you 0 or 1 or 2% or something you don't like. Don't lose a showing over that. I promise you go show those homes and you write 3% in, a large portion of those people are either going to accept it or they're going to go back and forth eventually, probably not even on commission, maybe on price, and they're going to sign the deal. I see movement over here. Let's read some stuff. Create an FAQ sheet answering pain points and present that proactively in your buyer's console. It's too easy. Don't make them think. Beautiful, Veronica. I'm happy to have joined you all. I have a listing appointment tonight. Ooh, I like that. I have to watch the replay. This is gold. Dee Dee, you're gold. Rebecca, your body language and the confidence in your voice need to be congruent to get the client to do what you want. 1,000%. 1,000%. Guy A and Guy B can say exactly the same thing, but if Guy A has rehearsed it so many times and truly believes in it, that his body language, his voice, his tone, everything about him is going to sell that client on working with them, or sell them to write a higher offer, or sell them to take a lower offer because that's where market value is. We're in sales, folks. We're not order takers. Some of us are order takers. They did really well in 2021, 2022. Now they're kind of dwindling out. So if you're an order taker, the time is limited. But if you are in sales, and sales doesn't mean manipulate, it doesn't mean put people in bad positions. I always say there are people that will put themselves in bad positions. My job as an influencer, as a salesperson, is to come in and say, whoa, I wouldn't let my daughter do this. I wouldn't let my mom do this. I can't let you do this either. But I understand why you would want to do this. So let me educate you a little bit on some of the experiences I've had, maybe some of the laws, some of the social norms, and maybe you'll change your mind. Would that be okay? And if you can say that confidently, to Rebecca's point, you're going to get the deal. Now let's talk about this last one. I'll close up, and then if you guys got any questions or anything, we can ask them. Buyer agent to buyer. Start working on your buyer presentation. I said this a lot. You know, this is no secret. The top agents are mostly listing agents. Not all of them, but generally speaking, most of them are listing agents. And most listing agents, and I'm not talking about somebody who gets a listing, I'm talking about the people who list the most tend to be the top agents, right? I mean, it makes sense. My perception, which may be wrong or right, well, I guarantee it's right with certain people and I guarantee it's wrong with other people, but I would say it's right for the majority of agents, is that buyers are so doggone attractive because I don't have to, well, until now, but I didn't have to talk about commission and I didn't have to sell you on my unique value. If I was the first person in front of them and I opened that door and I wrote that contract, boom, I got a deal. I like that. That's super sweet. I didn't have to talk about uncomfortable things. I felt so good and cozy. But if I go to that listing appointment, oh my gosh, I got to talk about commission. Commission is scary. I don't know if I'm worth that commission. What if they try to get a lower commission? And I've got to talk about my unique value. What do I bring to the table that no other listing agent brings to the table? Oh, I hate selling me. It doesn't feel good. Well, guess what? You're going to have to do all that on the buy side now. Buyers are going to interview buyer's agents more often now because they got to sign this big, scary, hairy deal. They're going to start asking more questions, looking into your Google reviews, looking at your Facebook page, see if you're active. Are you positive? Are you someone they would want to spend time with? Do they trust you? Are you confident? And you're also going to have the conversation of commission with them, right? So there's no way getting around it. You better start working on your buyer presentation. What I did with my team was I literally listed out all the things I wanted to have a discussion about with a buyer. I put them in a sensible order, and then I made a video. Now, if I get someone who's giving me a little bit of pushback because they don't want to meet with me and do the buyer consult, I'll say, Jeremy, I completely understand, man. You're busy. I'm busy. I get it 100%. Unfortunately, no agent can show you a home without an agreement. But in your shoes, I might not want to do that either, right? Without knowing exactly what I'm getting. So here's what I'm going to do for you. We've got a lot of systems in place. We try to be as professional as possible, as prepared as possible for a guy like you. I've built that buyer consult in a video. Now, I like to do it in person because it makes it easier for you to ask questions and stuff like that. But if you guys are that busy, I'm happy to send the video over. You guys can watch it in the comfort of your own home tonight in your pajamas at whatever time you want. And then you can call me, text me, email, whatever you want, all the questions you've got. And once you're comfortable with me and you're confident with me, and hopefully that video is what's going to build confidence in you. Now we can talk about this agreement. But until then, of course, you don't have enough information to make a decision like that. So feel free to watch this video. Right? So prepare a video. That video took me like 20 minutes, piece of cake. And now I've got evergreen content, right? Content I can use forever. It's awesome. If they say they just want to see this one home quick, I'm going to say that makes complete sense, right? Always start with empathy. Don't start pitching. That makes complete sense. But until this month, we've always been able to show you that home. There's a recent settlement that came out and they wanted buyers to realize that who they choose is a big decision and agreements are required now. And I always compare it to going to court. Of course, you want to skip right to the court case. It makes sense. But isn't it incredibly important to assure that your attorney knows what's going on, understands what you're trying to achieve, and you have the confidence in your attorney? It's the same thing as buying a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 home. Wouldn't you agree? And when you say it like that, you can't give them a 20, 25-minute buyer consult in that situation. When they want to see a home right now, just one quick home, they're not going to listen to that. That's where the video is going to help. And you've got to have a little 20, 30-second objection handler like that. You've got to prepare it. You've got to role play it. You've got to be smooth and confident with it. And if you are, they'll buy into you. So the last thing I'll say is, and this is not, part of me doesn't want to say this because I don't want this to become the norm or the easy button. I want this to be plan Z. After all else fails, if you don't want to watch my buyer consult video, you only want to see one home, you're not going to sign with me no matter what. You're going to call another agent. And I've tried everything I can and I've failed. Then and only then, I'll pull a Zillow and I'll say, we can do an address specific or a short-term agreement. We've got to have an agreement, but we'll get it with one exception. I need you to agree that if this is not the home and you want to continue working with me, that we will talk about a bigger commitment. Would you agree to that if I agreed to an address specific or short-term agreement with you? Most people are going to say yes. And I always train my guys in the past, hey, get into showings, get into showings. When you're in the showing, build the rapport, build the trust, build the confidence, and then get that buyer agreement right there. It's a little more challenging on the phone. Once you're in person, nobody wants to say no. And if they really like you and you've really built that rapport and that relationship and that confidence, they're going to say yes. And again, going back to the mentality of an agent, do you have unique value? Are you getting in front of plenty of people? If the answer to those two things is yes, you're going to get plenty of buyer reps signed. That's all I got, man. I said I'd have time for questions. I just talked right up until 58 after. I'm sorry.
Boom, massive fire. I mean, there's so many nuggets there. And guys, it's one little shift, right? So what are you going to implement? I know one of the biggest things was the video buyer consultation or even video seller agreement consultation, right? Like those are very highly leveraged and help overcome so many objections. You do it the same way every single time. I think that one is definitely a keeper. What are some of the other things that you're going to implement, right? So that's what we want you to do. Take action so you can experience that growth and continue to level up your production. I think we have maybe chance for one question real quick. Let's see if somebody has a burning question. Burning question. You were so through and covered this so well, Joe. I just want to thank you for that. Looks like, yeah, everybody just wants to watch and you know, write more notes and yeah, you've been all over this, and this is not so scary. We just implemented this on last week with our team, and we've got around 20 buyer agreements already signed. They're signing them as long as you can, you know, articulate the value. It's not a big deal. You know, it is something that you just have to do the process, and it's a mindset thing. If you believe it's not going to work, it's not going to work. If you believe it's going to work, you know, you get it to work. So very good. So that's a wrap, guy. We're right at 1 p.m. Joe, thank you so much as always for bringing massive value. You crushed it. And thank you everybody for tuning in here. We'll see you next week. This whole month, we're going to be doing NAR conversations and different angles from it. So stay tuned. We've got more. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos.